Hi everyone, this is Matt. I am climbing back to Mythic for the new season with the latest version of the Esper Dance of the Manse deck that I've been playing. I have not gotten sick of this deck yet. I find it really fun to play, and it seems to have game against pretty much every current deck in the standard metagame. So we're going to take it to the ladder and hopefully get some experience in a few different matches for YouTube. I mentioned in a previous video, one of the big improvements that I made to the original version is bringing in Agonizing Remorse. Hitting a key card from a lot of the decks is enough to slow them down long enough for us to get our game plan going. I think that is the single most impactful change that I've made. And one of the newer creatures I'm trying out is Archon of Sun's Grace. I think that it will help us a little bit in game one of the mono-red matchup, and just provide sort of an alternate way for us to go off when we are not finding our Dance of the Manse. So in general, I think that the deck plays out really consistently, and we now have the ability to interact with some hand disruption that we didn't have before. Alright, and speaking of the new cards, we've got 3 of them in our opening hand, and I think this is good enough to keep. We don't have any 2-drops to play like an Omen or the Egg, but with the Disruption and the Archon, I think this is a really strong starting hand. One of the decks I was hoping not to run into with this starter would be Mono Red, but it looks like we have avoided that matchup and should have a good chance to make it later in the game. So 2 can play at the Agonizing Remorse game, fair enough. I suspect we're playing a more traditional Esper control deck. I have not run into the mirror very much. Oh, interesting. Davriel. So, we don't really have a good way to interact with Davriel. I think we have to get rid of that, or they'll just get a little bit too much of an advantage by making us discard multiple turns in a row. Unfortunately, that probably means that our Archon of Sun's Grace will get taken away. If we're both doing nothing in the early game, however, I like our chances. We just have so much late game and card advantage and the ability to recur all of our enchantments multiple times that it feels like we're in a good spot right now. Ooh, and Treacherous Blessing is a fantastic draw. I don't think I need this land because we're almost certain to hit at least 1 off the Treacherous Blessing. And here, I don't know if it's worthwhile to cast Agonizing Remorse. There's a good chance that their last card doesn't really do much yet. I kind of want to wait a little bit and maybe clear the way on a key turn. The only problem is if they draw any action at all, it feels like this is a little bit more of a tap-out deck and they'll just play it right away. I think I am going to hold off on the Agonizing Remorse for now, though. So unfortunately they can hit our Treacherous Blessing here. And I'm not too concerned about the Birth of Meletus. And that is an excellent draw for us. 1 more land, and Ashiok can really take over the game. The other advantage of holding on to the Agonizing Remorse is if they play an Elspeth Conquers Death, we can potentially pick off something from their graveyard so they don't get that last trigger off of it. And Elspeth Conquers Death has been one of the cards that has really given me trouble against the more controlling decks. Not only can it permanently get rid of a Doom Foretold, but also the ability for them to bring back a Narset in blue-white control or another key permanent can really spiral and kind of take over the game.
zombie horde. Impressive, isn't it?
Alright, Liliana is a good draw.
Death never hurt anyone.
So here, actually, this is a great chance for us to use the Agonizing Remorse. And the templating on this is really annoying. You always need to make sure that you are checking out their hand. Oh, and this is another Doom Foretold deck. Really interesting. It feels like we have to take the Doom Foretold. I don't love leaving them with Davriel and another one, but unfortunately Doom Foretold is really, really strong at this point in the game since I don't have any other permanents to sacrifice. And I don't really want to bounce Liliana here because they could replay it with full loyalty. Unfortunately, I'm going to end up losing Ashiok, though, to Doom Foretold. I think it might even be worth holding on to a land to try to save the Dance of the Nance. And this puts us in a really awkward position because by hitting that land drop, now they can actually play both Davriel and Doom Foretold and just completely pick apart our hand.
All I've left you is pain.
So we haven't actually found any enchantments that are not exiled. And I think at this point we can throw in the towel for game one. There's just not a lot of ways for us to come back from the multiple planeswalker disadvantage we're at. Okay, so going into game two, I do absolutely think Dovin's Veto is going to be a critical card to bring in. D-Spark might be a clean answer to Doom Foretold, so that's a consideration. Since they have multiple black planeswalkers, I do want to bring in a couple Devout Decrees at least. And Wrath seems really bad against them, so we'll take all of those out. I like being able to pick apart their hand. And Oath of Kayak can provide a quick answer to Davriel, so I can trim on that, but I don't want to totally get rid of it. I think the rest of our deck looks pretty good, especially since I'm on the play. I don't want to be too reactive and bring in too many Devout Decree type cards. I want to kind of stick to our game plan and put the pressure on them. On the draw, I'll consider bringing in more of the reactive cards, so I think this looks pretty good for our starting hand or starting deck on the play. One thing I'm always trying to improve is really being mindful of whether we're on the play or the draw and changing the game plan accordingly. I think we really want to get out ahead of them on the play, make them respond to us. And on the draw, they're more likely to resolve some of their key spells, so we'll want some answers so that they're not able to snowball and just get an overwhelming advantage. This is definitely keepable. It's not ideal, but I think we should be able to find a third land for Teferi. And that's definitely good enough to keep on top. It might delay us a little bit because we won't be able to cast Dovin's Veto on the next turn. But if we play out Fabled Passage, we can at least cast Teferi on time. And I'm not too concerned about the Birth of Meletus. I found that card to be fairly underwhelming when I played it, especially in a Doom Foretold deck, where I didn't have a lot of planes to bring back if we ever recurred it. It's a little bit better, though, in a straight black-white deck where they have a lot more planes. We'll grab our island. And I think here, getting Teferi down feels good. I'm considering down tick just to draw the extra card. I don't know what we would need to bounce next turn. I think drawing an extra card here is a strong play, but I don't want to bounce their Birth of Meletus. I'm just going to draw the card. No need to give them an extra planes off of it. The other two parts of it don't really matter to us. Alright, so the downside of using Teferi to draw does make it vulnerable to Oath of Kaya. I think here we want to Treacherous Blessing. We want to make sure our Doom Foretold is able to keep going. So I'm going to Treacherous Blessing here. And play out a tapped land. And I'm actually going to discard the other Treacherous Blessing. We don't really need to draw any more cards right now. So now that they have less permanence on the battlefield, I am considering both Doom Foretold and Elspeth Conquers Death next turn. Notably, Elspeth Conquers Death threatens to get back our Teferi. Certainly, if they play their own Doom Foretold, I will definitely use Elspeth Conquers Death on it. Alright, and it looks like they might be struggling to make their land drops. So they did play out another Birth of Meletus and just play their land. This is an interesting position. Doom Foretold, they have a couple permanents to sacrifice to. I'm sort of inclined to play Agonizing Remorse and then be able to Dovin's Veto any non-creature spell. I think that's the plan I'm going to go with here. So they have their own Doom Foretold. I think we just want to take away their Treacherous Blessing here. Don't really care much about their Murderous Riders. And we'll play out a tapped land. So in a slow, grindy game like this, I find that card advantage is really king. And just keeping them off of the extra card draw feels very relevant, especially when the Murderous Riders don't do a lot against our deck. And Gideon, I think I am going to Dovin's Veto. I don't like the resiliency of it, and they have a lot of permanents that protect it from Doom Foretold. So there's no reason that I need to let that resolve. The other option that I probably should have considered a little bit longer would be Elspeth Conquers Death on Gideon. I think here I am going to hold off on making any plays. I want them to sacrifice the Birth of Meletus before we play our Doom Foretold. And if they play their Doom Foretold, that lets us get rid of Treacherous Blessing, and we can Elspeth Conquers Death it. And at this point, I think checking on their hand one more time, and then playing our Doom Foretold is the right play. So let's get rid of theirs. And run ours out. So this puts them in a really awkward spot where they may have to run out the Murderous Riders just to keep sacrificing things to Doom Foretold. The other option is sort of letting us have our Doom Foretold go off. And our life total is high enough that I'm not too concerned about getting hit by the 1/1. Dovin's Veto is a nice one. I am going to play out a tapped land, hold up Dovin's Veto, and then next turn, Dance of the Mance for a really large amount. Then again, their 1/1s aren't really threatening anything right now, so I'm not too concerned about them making another one each turn. Most likely they're going to Murderous Rider our 2/2 and get in for a couple. I definitely cannot let that resolve. We need that Dance of the Mance. And here, this should really close out the game. We're going to Dance of the Mance for 6. and fully restock our hand. I think that is the big advantage that we have over the straight black-white Doom Foretold deck, is the ability to buy back our key enchantments really advantages us in the long game. And we'll get in with our 2-2. Alright, they didn't buy it. I think here pitching the Treacherous Blessing makes sense. Okay, and again, our life total is high enough that I'm not super worried about the 1/1s in Elspeth. We will Elspeth Conquers Death on the Planeswalker. I don't know how the flavor on that one works. Okay, and they killed their own Elspeth, which I think is actually the right play. That way they can escape it. I think here we'll just pick it off out of the graveyard, though. And I think scrying and then playing Omen of the Sea at the end of their turn makes sense. I like Oath of Kaya as well. Gives us a way to get back some life and build up some more enchantments for Doom Foretold. And this time, I'm going to leave... No, I don't think I need to leave anything back here. Even if they find another Elspeth and pump, we can block 2 of these, and these are defenders. So we're still in okay shape. We'll go down to 3 there. And then we'll be able to buy back a bunch of things with Dance of the Mance. And I think in response, I'm going to Agonizing Remorse and set up the top of my deck. I like drawing the Oath of Kaya on my turn and the egg on this turn. So they almost certainly will take Dance of the Mance, but we do have the backup copy. Oh, I don't believe that was the correct play at all. Dance of the Mance is so powerful in our deck. I think they have to take one of the 2 copies, even though we have the other one. So here, I am going to get rid of the Murderous Rider and gain a little bit of life. And then we'll make the same attacks as last turn. I plan on playing out the egg and then sacrificing both the egg and Omen of the Sea so that we can buy them back with Dance of the Mance. We'll play the egg first to see what we draw. Oh, and another Doom Foretold is excellent. So that changes the play. We're just going to play that out right now. And here actually it makes sense to play this untapped because it actually nets us 1 life and puts the egg in the graveyard, which we probably want to do anyway. bring back our Teferi.
Will thank me later.
Bounce one of their walls.
That's more like it.
And here, I think we can Dance of the Manse for 6 and still play Doom Foretold. We have 3, 7, 9, 12. Let's go ahead and do that. Get back the Doom Foretold, the Elspeth Conquers Death, and the Golden Egg. I don't actually want the Treacherous Blessing here. I don't really want to endanger our life total, then we don't need the extra cards. Alright, and that will do it. So going into game 3, I'm trying to think if we saw anything that would change our setup. We may want to bring in a Kaya, just to potentially deal with the Elspeth in the graveyard. Note that Kunaros only impacts creature cards, so they could potentially still bring back Elspeth with Elspeth Conquers Death. They would not be able to actually cast it from their graveyard, though. If we were to bring in one or both of those cards, I'm trying to see what we would take out. It feels like the rest of our deck is really strong. I think I'm actually going to trim a single Treacherous Blessing and bring in the Kaya. I don't think Kunaros needs to come in just for the Elspeth. Yeah, let's run this. Kunaros is really good in matchups where your life total is being pressured. It doesn't feel like our life total is being pressured particularly hard in this matchup, so that kind of turns off one half of the card, and I don't think just stopping Elspeth Escape is worth bringing the card in. So here, hopefully we get to see what's up on their side on turn 2, and then craft our game plan accordingly, and Doom Foretold is always a welcome sight. Pretty much want to draw that at every point of the game. Okay, so they have the ability to stop us from checking out their hand, or take away our Treacherous Blessing. And I think here it makes sense to see what they've got going on. So we don't really care about either of these cards right now. Potentially in the future, Liliana could become a problem. Elspeth Conquers Death does handle it quite nicely. I think I'm just going to take away the Murderous Rider. They're so far from casting Liliana, and we do already have several ways to deal with it. I think it makes sense just to slow them down as much as possible. And here, I think it makes sense to Omen of the Sea. We can hold on to the Oath of Kaya, and Omen of the Sea will still give us something to get rid of to Doom Foretold. And we definitely want Dance of the Manse. Do we also want the Egg? It feels like we can do a little bit better than the Egg, and we actually want to keep hitting our land drops. So I'm going to put the Egg on the bottom, but I am going to draw Dance of the Manse. And then next turn, we can start gaining our Doom Foretold advantage. We'll draw another blue source here since we have all of our other colors pretty well covered. So here, depending on what we draw, we can potentially keep up Dovin's Veto, although the Cavalier of Dawn obviously changes the plan a little bit. So I think Elspeth Conquers Death is a nice clean answer to that. Okay, that is one of the cards that can help our opponent get back in the game. The nice thing is we are sort of pressuring their life total, so they won't be able to just use this forever. Or I should say to be able to play cards with that in play forever. The speed bump on Elspeth Conquers Death will be a real tax for our opponent who has a lot of non-creature spells. And we only have the Doom Foretold in our yard. I'm not sure that that's worth buying back by itself. I kind of like pressuring them more here and keeping up Dovin's Veto. And Devout Decree is a nice clean answer to Liliana, to Davriel. I'm not so worried about Davriel, and we do have Dovin's Veto. I'm actually going to put this on the bottom. It feels like we can deal with any troublesome permanents, and we just want to keep drawing our game plan. I'm going to let that resolve. And sacrifice our Oath of Kaya. So here we can put them really low by bringing back the Oath of Kaya and Doom Foretold. Can also just play Dream Trawler. Let's attack first. We're one away from bringing back Elspeth Conquers Death as well. I wonder if it makes sense to just play Dream Trawler here. I think I'm going to go for that plan. So they will be able to get rid of their Treacherous Blessing. Still feels like we're at a really large advantage. Not only do they have to deal with our Dream Trawler, but we are still threatening Dance of the Manse, bringing back a bunch of key permanents. We're okay with them checking this out. If they get rid of Dance of the Manse and deal with Dream Trawler, then it does become a little bit closer. But even then, we still are pressuring them quite a bit on the board. And that'll do it. After a rough game one, we're able to find the victory over the straight black-white Doom Foretold deck. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like or follow below, and I'll be back with more Esper Dance videos in the future. Thanks. Bye.